The first time it happened, he thought he was dreaming. The stars above shimmered with an intensity that felt almost unnatural, their light cascading over the barren expanse of rock and dust where he stood. His boots crunched softly against the ground as he adjusted his breathing apparatus, his breath shallow under the thin atmosphere. It was supposed to be a routine mining expedition. Just another day on this desolate planet at the edge of known space. But then she appeared. She didn't step out of the shadows or descend from some grand ship hovering in the sky. She simply was there, standing no more than 10 paces away, her form glowing faintly in hues of silver and blue. Her skin seemed to ripple like liquid starlight, catching the dim illumination of distant suns. Her eyes, impossibly large and luminous, locked onto him with a gaze so piercing it felt invasive yet strangely comforting. He froze, unsure if what he saw was real or merely a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and isolation. "Tell me what to do," she said, her voice resonating not just through his ears but deep within his chest. It wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that demanded attention. "I just want to be yours." He blinked, certain now that he must be losing his mind. Those words, so human in sentiment, yet spoken with such alien grace, sent a shiver down his spine. This being, whose very presence defied logic, looked at him as though he held all the answers she sought. And yet, all he could manage was a stuttered reply. What are you talking about?" Her expression softened, though it remained inscrutable, like staring into a mirror reflecting emotions too complex for comprehension. She took a step closer, her movements fluid and deliberate, every gesture imbued with purpose. Up close, he noticed details he hadn't before, the intricate patterns etched across her arms, shifting like constellations rearranging themselves. The way her hair, or whatever passed for it, seemed to float around her head as though caught in an invisible breeze. She radiated both beauty and power, qualities that left him simultaneously awestruck and terrified. "I am Zanara," she said, tilting her head slightly as though studying him. "Princess of the Velari. My people have watched yours for centuries, learning your ways, your thoughts, your desires. You are different, unique among your kind." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle between them. "I wish to understand you, to belong to you." His heart raced, pounding against his ribs as though trying to escape its confines. None of this made sense. Aliens didn't just show up claiming devotion, they invaded, negotiated, or annihilated. Yet here she was, speaking as though pledging herself to him were the most natural thing in the universe. "You don't even know me," he managed finally, his voice trembling. "Why would you say something like that?" Zanara tilted her head again, considering his question. "Your species places great value on individuality, on choice. I seek to learn these things from you, to become part of your world." She extended a hand toward him, palm open and inviting, though she stopped short of touching him. "But I cannot do so without guidance. Tell me what to do." For a moment, he considered turning away, pretending none of this had happened. He could retreat to his ship, lock himself inside, and pretend it was all a figment of his imagination. But something in her gaze rooted him to the spot. There was vulnerability there, hidden beneath layers of strength and mystery, a yearning that mirrored his own loneliness in ways he couldn't fully articulate. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and placed his gloved hand over hers. Her skin was cool to the touch, smooth and impossibly soft, sending a jolt of electricity coursing through his veins. For a brief instant, images flooded his mind, visions of vast cities floating among the stars, of beings with forms as varied as the galaxies they inhabited. Then, just as quickly, they vanished, leaving only the lingering sensation of connection. "I don't know what you expect from me," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But if you're serious about this, maybe we can start by talking." A flicker of something akin to relief crossed her features, though it was fleeting. "Then we shall begin," she replied, her tone resolute. "Together." Days turned into weeks as they spent hours conversing under the pale glow of twin moons. At first, their exchanges were awkward, filled with misunderstandings born of cultural differences and linguistic nuances. Zanara struggled to grasp concepts like sarcasm and metaphor, while he found himself tripping over explanations for things he'd always taken for granted. Emotions, relationships, the simple act of choosing one path over another. Yet despite these challenges, their bond grew stronger with each passing day. She asked endless questions, her curiosity insatiable. Why did humans place such importance on ownership? What drove them to create art, music, stories? How did they reconcile their capacity for love with their equally potent ability to destroy? He answered as best he could, drawing from his own experiences and observations, though he often wondered if he was doing justice to the complexity of his species. In turn, she shared fragments of her own existence, the rigid hierarchies of her people, the collective consciousness that governed their society, the crushing weight of expectations placed upon her as princess. Through it all, one truth became undeniable. Zanara was unlike anyone he'd ever met. Her intelligence was staggering, her insights profound, yet she possessed a childlike wonder when confronted with new ideas. She laughed freely at his jokes, even when she didn't entirely understand them, and listened intently to his stories, absorbing every detail as though committing it to memory. And always underlying everything was that same unwavering declaration, "Tell me what to do. I want to be yours." It should have felt strange, perhaps even unsettling, to hear such words from someone who could easily crush him with a thought. Instead, it filled him with a sense of responsibility he hadn't anticipated. He found himself wanting to guide her, to help her navigate the labyrinth of human experience. But with that desire came doubts. Doubts about whether he was truly qualified to lead her, whether he had any right to shape her understanding of a world he barely understood himself. One evening, as they sat side by side atop a jagged cliff overlooking an endless sea of dunes, she turned to him with a question that caught him off guard. "Do you believe in fate?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Some people do. They think everything happens for a reason, that our lives are part of some grand design. Others think it's all random, that we make our own choices and live with the consequences." "And you?" she pressed, her luminous eyes fixed on him. "I guess I'm somewhere in between," he admitted. "I like to think we have control over our lives, but sometimes it feels like there's a bigger picture we can't see." Zanara nodded slowly, as though processing his answer. "Among my people, destiny is predetermined. Every action, every decision, serves the greater good of the collective. Individual will is secondary to the needs of many." She paused, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. "But since meeting you, I find myself questioning that belief. If I am meant to follow a path laid out for me, why does this connection feel so significant?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. He wanted to tell her that connections like theirs were rare, precious even, but he couldn't bring himself to speak. Instead, he simply reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, offering silent reassurance. For the first time, he realized how much he cared for her, not just as a guide or companion, but as someone who mattered deeply to him. Yet even as their bond deepened, shadows began to creep into their idyllic existence. Strange occurrences plagued the area surrounding their makeshift camp, disturbances in the electromagnetic field, eerie silhouettes flitting just beyond the range of visibility. At first, he dismissed them as coincidences, products of paranoia bred by isolation. But Zanara grew increasingly tense, her usual calm demeanor giving way to unease. "They've found us," she murmured one night, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "My guards. They will not approve of this alliance." His stomach clenched at the thought. "What happens if they take you back?" Her expression darkened, and for a moment, she looked older, wearier. "There will be consequences. For both of us." Despite the growing tension, neither of them spoke of leaving. Instead, they clung to each other, finding solace in shared moments of quiet defiance. They explored ancient ruins buried beneath the sands, piecing together fragments of forgotten civilizations. They danced under the stars, her laughter echoing across the desolate landscape. They talked late into the night, sharing dreams and fears, forging a connection that transcended the boundaries of species and circumstance. But as the days stretched on, the inevitable loomed ever closer. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight painted the horizon in shades of gold and crimson, Zanara turned to him with a look of determination. "We cannot delay any longer," she said firmly. "You must teach me how to fight for myself. For us." The request startled him, not because of its audacity but because of the resolve behind it. Gone was the curious princess eager to learn. In her place stood a warrior ready to challenge the forces arrayed against them. And though fear gnawed at the edges of his resolve, he knew there was no turning back. "All right," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Let's get started." As they prepared for the battles ahead, the line between teacher and student blurred, replaced by something far more profound. Together, they forged a partnership built on trust, courage, and an unshakable belief in the possibility of change. Whatever lay in store for them, they faced it united, not as master and disciple, but as equals bound by a shared destiny. In the days that followed, their training intensified, transforming the tranquil solitude of their refuge into a crucible of discipline and discovery. Each morning began with exercises designed to hone reflexes and build endurance, tasks that pushed them both to their limits. She learned quickly, her movements evolving from hesitant mimicry to fluid precision. Yet it wasn't just physical prowess she sought to master. It was the art of strategy, the subtle interplay of anticipation and improvisation that defined combat. He taught her to read the terrain, to use the environment as both shield and weapon. Cliffs became vantage points, boulders transformed into barriers, and the shifting sands themselves became tools for misdirection. Under his guidance, she discovered the value of patience, of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. In return, she introduced him to techniques drawn from her own culture, maneuvers that relied less on brute force and more on redirecting energy, turning an opponent's strength against them. Their sparring sessions became a dance of contrasts, blending human grit with alien elegance. But it wasn't only battle tactics they practiced. Zanara insisted on understanding the psychological aspects of conflict, the motivations that drove individuals to act. To defeat an enemy, she reasoned, one must first understand their mind. So they delved into discussions about fear, ambition, loyalty, and betrayal, dissecting the emotions that fueled aggression. These conversations revealed new dimensions of her character, her analytical mind, her empathy, her willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. They also exposed vulnerabilities she rarely acknowledged, fears buried beneath layers of duty and expectation. One afternoon, as they rested beside a bubbling spring hidden within a canyon, she confessed something that shook him to his core. "Among my people, emotions are seen as weaknesses," she said, tracing patterns in the sand with her fingers. "To feel too deeply is to risk disrupting the harmony of the collective. That is why I was chosen, to lead without attachment, to rule without bias." Her voice wavered, betraying a fragility he hadn't witnessed before. "But being with you, it makes me question everything I've been taught. Is it wrong to want connection? To desire something beyond obligation?" He reached out, placing a hand over hers. "No," he replied firmly. "It's not wrong. Wanting to connect, to care, it's what makes life worth living." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she nodded, drawing strength from his words. From that moment on, their bond deepened further, becoming a source of resilience rather than distraction. They trained harder, fought smarter, and faced each challenge with renewed determination. And yet, looming over them like a storm cloud was the knowledge that their time together was finite. The signs grew impossible to ignore. Strange symbols began appearing on the rocks surrounding their camp, glowing faintly in the twilight. Whispers echoed through the canyons, voices speaking in a language neither of them recognized but which sent chills down their spines. Once, during a scouting mission, they stumbled upon a cluster of metallic orbs hovering silently above the ground, their surfaces rippling like liquid mercury. When Zanara approached, they emitted a low hum before vanishing into thin air. "They're testing us," she whispered, her jaw tightening. "Probing our defenses." "Who?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "My people," she said grimly. "They've sent seekers, agents tasked with retrieving those who stray from the path. They won't stop until they've brought me back." The realization settled over him like a suffocating blanket. No matter how skilled they became, no matter how strong their bond, they were outnumbered and outmatched. The Velari were a civilization millennia ahead of humanity, their technology and abilities beyond comprehension. Against such odds, their chances of survival seemed slim at best. Yet surrender was not an option. Not for her, and certainly not for him. As the days passed, They devised contingency plans, mapping escape routes and stockpiling supplies. They fortified their position, using Zanara's knowledge of advanced materials to construct barriers capable of withstanding even the most sophisticated attacks. But preparation alone wasn't enough. They needed leverage, something to tip the scales in their favor. That's when inspiration struck. During one of their nightly stargazing sessions, he pointed to a particularly bright constellation and recounted a story passed down through generations in his family. It spoke of a legendary artifact hidden somewhere on this very planet, an object said to grant immense power to whoever possessed it. Legends often held kernels of truth, especially when tied to ancient civilizations, and given the ruins they'd explored earlier, it wasn't implausible that such an item might exist. If we can find it, he suggested, excitement creeping into his voice, maybe we can use it to level the playing field. Zanara's expression shifted from skepticism to cautious optimism. It's a gamble, she admitted. But desperate times call for desperate measures. With renewed purpose, they embarked on a quest to uncover the artifact, venturing deeper into the planet's uncharted territories than ever before. The journey tested their resolve in ways neither had anticipated. Brutal storms forced them to take shelter in precarious caves, their walls adorned with cryptic carvings that hinted at long-forgotten secrets. Rivers of molten lava blocked their path, requiring ingenuity and teamwork to cross safely. And always, the sense of being watched lingered, a constant reminder that time was running out. Finally, after days of grueling travel, they reached their destination, a sprawling temple carved into the side of a mountain, its entrance guarded by colossal statues that seemed to pulse with latent energy. Inside, the air was thick with an otherworldly hum, and the walls shimmered with iridescent patterns that shifted as they moved. At the heart of the structure lay a pedestal, atop which rested the artifact, a crystalline sphere pulsating with light. As Zanara approached, the sphere reacted, its glow intensifying until it enveloped her entirely. Images flooded her mind, visions of unity and discord, creation and destruction, hope and despair. She staggered backward, clutching her head as waves of emotion crashed over her. When the light faded, she stood tall, her posture radiating newfound confidence. "It's alive," she breathed, awe evident in her voice. "Not just an object, but a consciousness. It understands." Before he could respond, the ground trembled violently, and the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the chamber. The Seekers had arrived. Standing at the precipice of confrontation, Zanara gripped the crystalline sphere tightly, its pulsating light casting eerie shadows across the ancient temple walls. The footsteps grew louder, reverberating through the stone corridors like ominous thunder. Neither of them spoke. Words felt inadequate in the face of what was coming. Instead, they exchanged a glance, a silent pact forged in the crucible of shared struggle and mutual trust. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The first of the Seekers emerged from the shadows, their forms sleek and angular, clad in armor that shimmered like oil slicks under moonlight. Their faces were obscured by featureless masks, giving them an aura of cold detachment. Behind them came others, forming a semicircle that blocked the exit. The air crackled with tension, charged by the implicit threat of violence. "You have defied the will of the collective," one of the Seekers intoned, their voice devoid of inflection. "Return now, Princess Zanara, and your transgressions may yet be forgiven." Zanara stepped forward, her stance resolute. "I will not return," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "Not to a life devoid of choice, not to a future where my soul is shackled to duty." The leader of the Seekers tilted their head slightly, as though assessing her response. "Emotion clouds your judgment. This human has corrupted you, diverted you from your purpose. Surrender the artifact and come willingly, or we will take it, and you by force." Her grip tightened on the sphere, its light flaring brighter in response. "You underestimate us," she said, her tone icy. "And you underestimate the power of connection." Without warning, the Seekers lunged, moving with unnatural speed. Zanara raised the artifact, unleashing a wave of energy that sent several of them sprawling. The remaining attackers regrouped quickly, drawing weapons that hummed with lethal potential. He sprang into action, grabbing a fallen staff-like relic from the floor and charging toward the nearest adversary. The clash of metal against alien alloy filled the chamber, sparks flying as they traded blows. Meanwhile, Zanara wielded the artifact with precision, channeling its power in bursts that disrupted the Seeker's formations. Yet for every foe she incapacitated, two more seemed to appear, pressing them further into the depths of the temple. The sheer number of enemies overwhelmed their defenses, forcing them to retreat deeper into the labyrinthine corridors. "We can't keep this up forever," he shouted, parrying a strike aimed at his midsection. "We don't have to," Zanara called back, her voice strained but determined. "Follow me." She led them through narrow passages, the artifact illuminating their path as they fled. Behind them, the Seekers pursued relentlessly, their footfalls echoing ominously. Just when it seemed they had nowhere left to run, Zanara halted abruptly before a massive door adorned with intricate carvings. Placing the artifact against the surface, she muttered something in her native tongue. The door groaned open, revealing a cavernous chamber bathed in golden light. Inside stood a towering mechanism, its design reminiscent of the artifact's crystalline structure but magnified 1,000-fold. Energy coursed through its veins, creating a symphony of light and sound that resonated deep within their bones. "This is it," Zanara said, awe mingling with urgency in her voice. The Nexus, a device capable of amplifying the artifact's power exponentially. If we activate it, we might stand a chance. "But at what cost?" he asked, eyeing the machine warily. "This isn't just some tool. It's alive, sentient. What if it doesn't play nice?" "There's no time to debate," she snapped, desperation edging her tone. "Trust me." He hesitated, torn between caution and the need to act. Then, remembering the sacrifices they'd already made, the risks they'd taken, he nodded. "All right. Let's do it." Together, they approached the Nexus, Zanara holding the artifact aloft as she interfaced with the machine. The process was excruciatingly slow, each second stretching into eternity as the Seekers closed in. Finally, with a deafening roar, the Nexus activated, flooding the chamber with blinding light. Waves of energy surged outward, engulfing everything in their path. When the brilliance subsided, the Seekers lay unconscious, their bodies sprawled across the floor. But the victory came at a price. Cracks spiderwebbed across the Nexus, and the artifact itself had dimmed significantly, its once brilliant glow reduced to a faint flicker. "We've bought ourselves time," Zanara said, her voice hollow. "But the Nexus won't hold them forever." He stared at her, his chest heaving from exertion. "Then we keep moving. We find another way." She nodded, though doubt shadowed her features. As they prepared to leave the chamber, a sudden realization struck him. "Wait," he said, halting her. "If the Nexus amplified the artifact's power, maybe it amplified something else too, something we haven't considered yet." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He gestured to the cracks spreading across the machine. "Think about it. The Nexus connected to the artifact, and the artifact connected to you. Maybe it changed you too." Her eyes widened as understanding dawned. Slowly, tentatively, she extended her hand, focusing on the residual energy still coursing through her veins. A spark ignited, small at first but growing rapidly until it illuminated the entire chamber. She gasped, staring at her palm in astonishment. I can feel it," she murmured. "The power, it's part of me now." Before either of them could fully comprehend the implications, the ground quaked violently, signaling the arrival of reinforcements. They exchanged a glance, resolve hardening in their expressions. "Time to put your new gift to the test," he said with a grim smile. As they emerged from the chamber, the reinforcements awaited them. A phalanx of Seekers flanked by towering mechs, their metallic limbs bristling with weaponry. The sight was enough to make even the bravest soul falter, but Zanara stood tall, her newfound power crackling around her like a living storm. She raised her hand, and arcs of energy surged outward, striking the nearest mech with devastating force. Its armor buckled, circuits frying as it collapsed into a heap of molten scrap. But the victory came at a cost. Each burst of energy seemed to drain her visibly, her luminous skin dimming slightly with every strike. He watched in alarm, realizing that this new power wasn't limitless. It was tied to her very essence, siphoning her vitality with each use. "We can't keep doing this," he shouted over the din of battle. You're burning yourself out. I have no choice, she shot back, her voice strained but resolute. Another wave of energy erupted from her hands, obliterating a second mech. But the effort left her staggering, her knees nearly buckling beneath her weight. Before he could reach her side, one of the Seekers lunged forward, their blade glinting ominously in the flickering light. Acting on instinct, he swung the staff-like relic he still carried, deflecting the blow just in time. Sparks flew as metal clashed against alien alloy, the sheer force of the impact vibrating through his arms. For a moment, they locked eyes, his human determination meeting the cold, unyielding resolve of the Seeker. Then something unexpected happened. The Seeker paused, their mask tilting ever so slightly as though confused, or perhaps hesitant. It was fleeting, barely noticeable, but it gave him an opening. With a swift strike, he disarmed the Seeker, sending their weapon clattering to the ground. Instead of retaliating, the figure stepped back, lowering their stance. "Enough," the Seeker said, their tone shifting subtly. No longer robotic and detached, there was now a hint of emotion, something almost akin to regret. "This is not our way." Zanara froze mid-attack, her glowing form casting eerie shadows across the corridor. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice trembling with exhaustion and confusion. The Seeker removed their mask, revealing a face startlingly similar to Zanara's own, albeit older, lined with wisdom and weariness. "I am Veyros," they said softly, "your eldest guardian, and I have been sent not to destroy you, but to bring you home safely." Her expression shifted from defiance to disbelief. "If that were true, why attack us? Why send these machines?" Veyros sighed heavily, their gaze dropping for a moment before meeting hers again. "Orders are orders, Princess, even when they defy logic. But I see now what the collective refuses to acknowledge. The bond you share with this human has awakened something within you. Something greater than any of us imagined." He felt a chill run down his spine. Was this some kind of trick? A ploy to lower their guard? Yet there was sincerity in Veyros's words, a vulnerability that didn't align with the ruthless efficiency of the earlier assault. "What do you mean, greater?" Zanara asked cautiously, her posture relaxing only slightly. Veyros gestured toward her, then to the artifact still pulsing faintly in her grasp. "The Nexus did more than amplify your power. It fused your essence with the collective consciousness of the Velari. You are no longer merely a princess bound by duty. You are a bridge between our people and yours, between individuality and unity." The revelation hit them both like a tidal wave. Zanara staggered backward, clutching the artifact tighter as if trying to steady herself. "A bridge," she repeated, her voice barely audible. "But why would the collective fear that?" "Because bridges challenge boundaries," Veyros replied solemnly. "And boundaries are what keep order intact. Your existence threatens the balance they've worked millennia to maintain." For a long moment, silence reigned, broken only by the distant hum of the damaged Nexus behind them. Then Zanara straightened, her resolve returning with renewed intensity. "If that's true, then my place isn't with them anymore. My place is here, with him. With those who believe in connection over control." Veyros studied her carefully, their expression unreadable. Finally, they nodded. "Very well. But know this, the collective will not stop pursuing you. They cannot allow such a threat to go unchecked." "And what about you?" she asked sharply. "Will you stand against us too?" Veyros hesitated, their gaze flickering between Zanara and the man standing beside her. When they spoke again, their voice carried a note of quiet rebellion. "No. Not this time. I have served the collective faithfully for centuries, but even loyalty has its limits. Perhaps it is time we questioned whether their vision of harmony truly serves the greater good." With that, Veyros turned and signaled to the remaining Seekers, who began retreating without further resistance. As the last of them disappeared into the shadows, the tension in the air dissipated, leaving behind an uneasy calm. "Well," he said after a beat, breaking the silence. "That was unexpected." Zanara managed a weak laugh, though her exhaustion was evident. Unexpected doesn't begin to cover it. She looked down at the artifact, her brow furrowing. Do you think they'll really leave us alone now? He shook his head. Not a chance. This isn't over. It's just beginning. His words proved prophetic sooner than either of them anticipated. As they made their way back to the surface, the temple began collapsing around them, destabilized by the Nexus's activation. Massive chunks of stone tumbled from the ceiling, forcing them to navigate a deadly gauntlet of falling debris. Zanara used her powers sparingly, creating barriers to shield them from the worst of the destruction, but it was clear she was reaching her limit. By the time they emerged into the open air, the entire structure had crumbled into ruin behind them. Gasping for breath, they collapsed onto the rocky terrain, staring up at the twin moons overhead. For a brief moment, peace settled over them, an illusion shattered by the sudden appearance of a massive ship descending from the sky. It wasn't Valari design, it was something else entirely. Sleek and angular, its surface shimmered with iridescent hues that shifted unpredictably. A beam of light enveloped them, lifting them effortlessly into the air. Before they could react, they found themselves aboard the vessel, surrounded by beings unlike anything they'd encountered before. These newcomers were ethereal, their forms translucent and constantly shifting, as though composed of liquid starlight. One of them stepped forward, their presence commanding yet oddly comforting. "You have done well," the being intoned, their voice resonating like a chorus of whispers. "But your trials are far from finished. The artifact you carry is one piece of a larger puzzle, one that spans galaxies and timelines. To complete it, you must journey beyond this world, and face challenges neither of you can yet comprehend." Zanara exchanged a glance with him, her expression torn between awe and apprehension. "Who are you?" she asked finally. "And what do you want from us?" The being smiled, or at least it seemed to. Their form rippled, taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. "We are the architects," they replied. "Guardians of the cosmos, tasked with maintaining balance across dimensions. What we want is simple, for you to embrace the roles fate has chosen for you. Together, you hold the key to reshaping reality itself." Before either of them could respond, the ship lurched forward, entering a wormhole that stretched endlessly before them. Stars blurred into streaks of light, and the universe seemed to fold in on itself. As they hurtled through the void, one thing became painfully clear. Their story was no longer just about survival or defiance. It was about destiny, and the choices they would make to shape it. The wormhole spat them out into a realm unlike any they had ever seen. Space and time seemed to warp unpredictably, with nebulae swirling like liquid rainbows and planets orbiting in impossible geometries. The ship's interior hummed with an otherworldly energy, its translucent walls offering glimpses of this surreal cosmos. Zanara clutched the artifact tightly, her knuckles white as she absorbed the enormity of their situation. "We're not ready for this," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the low thrum of the ship's engines. "How are we supposed to reshape reality? We can barely keep ourselves alive." Zanara didn't respond immediately, her gaze fixed on the shifting panorama outside. When she finally spoke, her tone carried a weight that made him uneasy. "Maybe it's not about being ready," she said softly. "Maybe it's about doing what needs to be done, no matter the cost." Her words hung heavy in the air, a grim foreshadowing of what lay ahead. The architects had given them no instructions beyond their cryptic declaration, leaving them adrift in uncertainty. Yet even without clear guidance, one truth was undeniable. Whatever path they chose, it would demand sacrifices neither of them could yet imagine. Hours, or perhaps days. Time itself seemed fluid here, passed before the ship slowed, coming to rest beside a colossal structure floating in the void. It resembled a shattered star, its jagged edges glowing faintly with residual energy. As they disembarked, the architects accompanied them, their forms flickering like candle flames caught in a breeze. "This is the Nexus core," one of the beings explained, gesturing toward the fractured monument. "A fragment of the original Nexus you activated on your world. Within it lies the key to restoring balance, but only if wielded by those who understand both unity and individuality." Zanara stepped forward cautiously, her connection to the artifact resonating with the core's presence. She extended her hand, and a tendril of light bridged the gap between her palm and the structure. Instantly, visions flooded her mind. Galaxies birthing and dying, civilizations rising and falling, threads of existence intertwining in an endless tapestry. Among these images, she saw glimpses of herself and him, their fates woven deeply into the fabric of creation. "It's showing us possibilities," she whispered, awe and fear mingling in her voice. "Choices we'll have to make." He moved to stand beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Then let's make them together." As they delved deeper into the core's labyrinthine interior, the challenges became increasingly surreal. They encountered trials that tested not just their physical strength but their very identities. In one chamber, they faced mirror versions of themselves, twisted reflections embodying their deepest fears and insecurities. These doppelgangers taunted them relentlessly, forcing them to confront doubts they'd buried long ago. "You're nothing but a pawn," his reflection sneered. "Do you really think someone like you deserves to stand beside her?" "And you," Zanara's reflection purred mockingly. "You claim to seek freedom, yet all you've done is trade one master for another." Each word cut like a blade, threatening to unravel the fragile bonds they'd built. But through sheer willpower, and each other's unwavering support, they overcame these illusions, shattering the mirrors and emerging stronger for it. In another trial, they were separated, plunged into isolated chambers where time flowed erratically. Hours felt like seconds, and vice versa, distorting their perception until they could no longer trust their own senses. Despair crept in as they called out to one another, their voices swallowed by the oppressive silence. But then, faintly at first, they began to hear echoes, not of sound, but of emotion. Fear, hope, love, all transmitted across the void, binding them together despite the distance. Slowly, painstakingly, they navigated the chambers, guided by the intangible thread of their connection. When they reunited, tears streamed down their faces, not from relief, but from the profound realization that their bond transcended even the boundaries of space and time. Finally, they reached the heart of the core, a pulsating orb suspended within a field of infinite darkness. The architects materialized around them once more, their expressions unreadable. "To restore balance," one of them intoned, "you must merge your essence with the core. Together, you will become its guardians, a living embodiment of harmony." Zanara hesitated, glancing at him. "What does that mean? For us?" "It means sacrifice," the architect replied bluntly. "Your individuality will dissolve, becoming part of something greater. You will exist, but not as you know yourselves now." His stomach churned at the prospect. To lose himself, to lose her, was unthinkable. And yet, wasn't that the nature of sacrifice? Giving up everything for the sake of something bigger? "No," Zanara said suddenly, her voice firm. "There has to be another way." The architects tilted their heads simultaneously, curiosity rippling through their forms. "Explain." She took a deep breath, stepping closer to the orb. "You speak of balance, but true balance isn't about erasing differences, it's about embracing them. If we merge completely, we risk losing the very qualities that make us unique. Instead, let us serve as anchors, two distinct beings working in tandem to maintain equilibrium." For a moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, the architects nodded. "An intriguing proposal," one of them murmured. "Very well. We shall accept your terms." The orb flared brightly, enveloping them in a cocoon of light. Pain and euphoria coursed through their veins simultaneously as their essences intertwined with the core, but not entirely. Fragments of their identities remained intact, tethering them to their humanity and heritage. When the light faded, they stood transformed. Their bodies shimmered with an ethereal glow, their forms radiating a harmonious blend of Velari elegance and human resilience. "You have chosen wisely," the architects declared. "Go forth, guardians, and weave the threads of destiny anew." With the core stabilized, they returned to their home planet, finding it forever changed. The ruins of the temple had been reclaimed by nature, vibrant flora sprouting amidst the rubble. Above, the skies shimmered with newfound clarity, as though purged of centuries of stagnation. Word spread quickly of their transformation, drawing both reverence and skepticism from those who witnessed it. Some hailed them as saviors, Others viewed them with suspicion, fearful of the power they now wielded. But none could deny the subtle shifts occurring across the galaxy. Conflicts easing, alliances forming, and barriers dissolving. Zanara and the man stood atop a cliff overlooking the landscape, their hands intertwined. For a moment, they simply gazed at the horizon, content in the knowledge that their journey was far from over. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. She smiled, her luminous eyes reflecting the stars above. "We live. We learn. We grow. Together." And as the winds carried whispers of distant worlds, they knew their story was only beginning. A tale of love, sacrifice, and the unyielding pursuit of balance in an ever-changing universe.